Welcome to today's session where our presenters will discuss building generative AI features that your customers love. This session is a level 100, and in this session, you'll learn more about building impactful generative AI features, which will be impactful for all your customers. Before we welcome them onto the stage, if you haven't already, could you please download the AWS Summit app via the QR codes on the screen. Please join me in welcoming onto the stage David, a solutions architect at AWS, followed by Nicola, who is a solutions architect at AWS as well.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave MacDonald. I'm a solutions architect at AWS, and I'm joined by Nicola Smyth. We work with startups across Australia and New Zealand to help them make the most of AWS. And in particular today, we're going to be bringing you our observations from the fields about what successful startups are doing around making generative AI features in their products that their customers love. And so how are we going to approach this? It turns out that prototyping generative AI features is really easy. Actually getting these into the hands of your customers and used is actually really hard. So we're going to be exploring why it's hard, and then we're bringing you some examples from local startups that have been effectively embedding generative AI into their product in a way that their customers are using and loving. And then we will distill this down into some AI product design strategies that you can use when building out and developing generative AI features in your product. And with that, we'll get started. So many of you here today will be responsible for building out your product to increase the value to your existing customers and increase their market share with new customers. And many of you, of course, will be exploring generative AI yourself to create market differentiation, generate additional growth, streamline user experience, and generally take away the undifferentiated heavy lifting associated with using your product. However, where many of us come unstuck is actually getting these features into the hands of our customers and used repeatedly. And so the next question is, okay, where are we getting stuck in this process? So I'd like to loop back to the product lifecycle. Many of you here will be familiar with this process in terms of starting with an idea, doing market research, analyzing customer demand before prototyping the idea, building, releasing, and iteratively improving it. This is a tried and tested approach to building product features, and none of this changes with generative AI. However, what Nicola and I have observed over the last couple of years is that we're having a lot of fun here on the left. We're having a lot of fun prototyping, hacking, hackathons, all those kind of things to ideate these product features, but we're getting stuck. We're getting stuck getting these features into the hands of our customers at the last stages here. Actually building, releasing, and iteratively improving it and getting that traction with our customers is proving challenging for everyone in getting it actually into the market. So where are we getting stuck? Many of these problems will be familiar to you, but it's worth going through them anyway. The first is consistency. With large language models, with identical inputs, you might get different outputs each time. Not only does this make it difficult from a quality assurance perspective, but it also makes it difficult from building trust from your customers. They're not sure they're going to get the right result every time. Discoverability is another one. Hiding features behind conversational interfaces makes it really challenging to understand what your feature can do, and it can frustrate your users. Verbosity is another one. Large language models, by their definition, generate text, generate outputs that can be voluminous, which means it makes it difficult for your users to understand what is important in this output. And equally, it makes it difficult to integrate it into your application in a way that is seamless with your existing user experience. Model cost is another challenge. It may seem very cheap when you start out. The cost per token is very small, but as you scale, this becomes challenging, especially if you're not generating revenue on the back of this feature to pay that cost. Model availability and performance is another big issue. If you're offering a global product in global markets, but you have compliance requirements that mean you need to operate in certain regions, you may find the model that you want isn't available, which means that you have to have some sort of staggered rollout process of this feature. And equally, the performance of these models is variable. They have high latency in some instances, or rate limits mean that you're not able to get the throughput that you would hope or expect for your users. And finally, security. So generative AI introduces not only untrusted inputs, but untrusted outputs. So how do you as a business manage the risk around getting these features into the hands of their customers and used? So based on these challenges, the next question is, when should I be using generative AI? And again, it comes back to working backwards. So before you even decide to build a product feature that embeds generative AI, you should be asking or answering these 3 points. The first point is, what is the user problem? Will using generative AI reduce friction, improve the user experience, or generate additional value for your customers? They will actually want to use repeatedly. Once we've understood that user problem, what is the business goal? We're building this new feature. Does it align with our business or our strategic objectives? Are we going to expand our market share? Are we going to be able to enter new markets? And finally, data for context. Large language models are very smart, but they don't know everything about your business. So if you don't have the data available, then this feature is not going to be very useful to your users. So once you have all of those 3 things, that's when you should start saying, okay, I want to embed generative AI into my product in this particular feature. But then the next question is, what is generative AI actually useful for in my product? So now I'd like to hand it over to Nicola, who's going to be talking about generative AI superpowers that can be used to embed generative AI in your product. Thank you, Nicola.
Thanks. Thank you very much, David. So as David highlighted, what we really want to be thinking about is actually our user problem and working backwards from that. And from there, we can think about what generative AI capabilities or superpowers we want to be using in our own products. What we're seeing is that generative AI is really good at specific tasks. So today, these are our generative AI superpowers. These are tasks where generative AI uniquely excels in solving complex problems. So I'm going to run us through 5 or 6 different superpowers today that we're seeing our customers using to build out new features. The first of these powers is summarization and categorization. Vital is an AI experience platform that actually helps patients through the emergency room journey. They're deployed in over 100 hospitals across the US and service 3 million patients annually. Vital has been building out capabilities based on generative AI using Amazon Nova Micro and Anthropic Claude Sonnet 3.5 in order to build out their incidental medical findings feature. This feature is able to cost-effectively categorize and summarize ER notes and tests with 95% accuracy across different medical modalities. Critically, what it can actually do is identify medical concerns requiring follow-up beyond that emergency room scenario. And this was a capability that was previously not possible using manual intervention. This platform, in one site alone in Arizona, has identified hundreds of incidental medical findings, and they've generated over $750,000 worth of radiology follow-ups. So obviously this is great for the hospital system as it's additional revenue, but it's also really good for patients seeking follow-up. What I think makes this particularly noteworthy is that it unlocks a capability previously not possible without generative AI, as it allows them to scale this incidental medical findings feature without that manual intervention. The next power I want to discuss is regionalization, which is being used by another customer, Sapia AI. So Sapia AI is an AI hiring agent that it can actually interview, synthesize feedback, and actually deliver personalized feedback to their candidates. They recently released a new feature called Chat Pro. This feature actually allows them to scale beyond regional and language boundaries. It leverages superpowers we've already seen, like summarization, to actually summarize the candidates' responses and evaluate these against a specialized criteria and score them, and then provide personalized feedback to each candidate based on this. It's also able to see where there might be gaps in the candidate responses and be able to provide some follow-up questions to get a more complete picture of each candidate. In addition to this, it's able to effectively scale across borders or regions, as it can seamlessly translate outputs using a large language model into over 50 different languages, a capability they were previously not able to leverage easily. Their own customers have reduced time to hire, and recruiters are saying that they're saving up to over 20 hours per week using the tool. So by leveraging generative AI for regionalization, they're able to scale globally. Data analysis is the next superpower I want to touch on. Dovetail, another customer, which is a customer intelligence platform, helps organizations actually centralize and aggregate and analyze qualitative data and feedback that they're getting from their own customers. One of the challenges with the traditional way for actually analyzing this customer feedback is it can be really time-consuming and a really manual process. Being able to categorize, synthesize, and actually identify all of those customer trends can be hard to do in like a really time-sensitive manner, so you may actually miss some of these trends. To address this, Dovetail created Channels, which is a generative AI-powered solution that actually optimizes how organizations can do this. And this is using, amongst other superpowers, data analysis. So it's actually able to dynamically classify information based on predetermined themes, but also evolve as you get new customer input to understand if there are any other emerging themes and trends in the data. It's using anthropic models to actually transform this into concise and actionable feedback. And critically, it's actually integrating knowledge bases to provide more contextual information and to analyze transcripts to generate relevant insights into different research personas. So the impact has been significant for organizations who are able to derive customer insights in real time. So they're not waiting to identify these different trends. So it enables much faster decision making for product owners and for their own customers. And this has been reported to save tens of hours of manual analysis from their own customers. Image analysis is another real generative AI superpower that's leveraging multimodal models. So these are the models that can take either inputs or outputs in different formats, whether that's text, image, audio, or many other different types of formats. And we're seeing Tappy leverage it really effectively. So Tappy is a property maintenance management platform that allows property managers to do things like intelligent invoice processing or AI-powered tenant reporting to really simplify and streamline their workflows. Tappy faced one challenge in their intelligent invoice processing is that a lot of the documents they were getting, maybe they weren't documents that they were expecting. Maybe the invoices came in really different formats, and using traditional OCR methods didn't allow them the flexibility that they needed, so there was a lot of manual intervention which introduced cost and introduced more time into that workflow. So what they did was actually augment that existing solution with a generative AI superpower, that is image analysis using generative AI models. So this new system combined that capability in order to streamline that workflow and provide a lot more flexibility within it. And the result of that was really significant. It actually saved them, it reduced the cost of running that workflow by 10 times and actually improved the flexibility of that platform, reducing the amount of manual intervention required. So the final superpower I'll touch on before handing back to David is the ability to actually generate dynamic responses to user input. And that's what we're seeing our leading customer experience platform, Ask Nicely, doing. So they're a startup that actually specialises in helping their customers understand more about customer loyalty and satisfaction through using Net Promoter Score surveys. One of the challenges with collecting really insightful customer feedback is that traditional static surveys don't necessarily capture the full context of that customer, can't really probe and ask follow-up questions into something that might be really interesting. So to address this limitation, Ask Nicely created dynamic surveys that are actually intelligently able to respond to different user input. So this solution is actually able to ask follow-up questions, taking context of that customer, like their recent purchase history and other characteristics, and respond accordingly and ask those follow-up questions. It's also able to take really negative feedback and transform that into something a bit more constructive and helpful for their customer. And the impact has been quite considerable. From its release into production, they saw a 46% adoption rate by all eligible customers for this new feature, and they saw a threefold increase in the amount of responses from people actually participating in these dynamic surveys, which really generate a lot more and insights and a greater depth of insights as well as a result of these new dynamic surveys. So with that, I'm going to pass back to David, who's going to go in and talk about AI product design strategies that you can use to actually think about where you might implement some of these superpowers. Thank you, David.
Excellent, thank you, Nicola. So as Nicola said, based on these success stories, we've distilled what we've learned, what these customers learned, into what we call 4 AI product design strategies that you can use when you're ideating a feature in your product that leverages generative AI. And our first AI product design strategy is to focus on tasks over conversations. Your users using your product are probably not coming to your product to have a chat. They're coming to your product to complete a task, to complete a job, to get an outcome. And so by focusing on the task that they are looking to achieve, not only are you going to create a better user experience, but you're also going to navigate the challenges around large language models. For example, by providing the specific inputs and outputs that you are expecting, you are more likely to get a model that is practical in size and available in more regions. It quite likely will be a smaller model, which means it's going to be more cost-effective from a revenue cost perspective, so that it has less impact on you as a business. Vital's incidental medical finding product that you saw before was very prescriptive in terms of the output. The output was incidental medical findings that could help save people or improve their health outcomes. The inputs were quite clear, it was medical inputs. So it's very focused on the task at hand. And when you look at it and you think about that task, from a security perspective, it becomes a lot easier to manage. The outputs are more prescriptive, you have more sense of what's involved in a free-form conversation, which means that you can be more certain around the guardrails being effective, or we can introduce other mechanisms to help manage the security outputs to align with that task. Now, to be clear, this isn't to say don't use a conversational interface. Ask Nicely's dynamic survey feature had a conversational interface in terms of soliciting additional feedback or insights from their users. However, it was focused on the task, getting additional insights, not the interface. So focus on the task, not the interface, when you're building out your features that embed generative AI. Our second AI product design strategy is to focus on asynchronous tasks over synchronous. So one of the biggest challenges around large language models is latency and rate limits. By managing that or understanding that, if you have a synchronous task where someone is waiting, you're racing a clock with their attention. That is always going to be a problem. If you make the task asynchronous in your product, you can make it extremely clear that the user will wait for a response. You'll note from the previous examples, Tappy's invoice processing, dovetails analysis would all happen in the background, which means the users aren't sitting there waiting for a spinning dial or waiting for a response. You're not grabbing their attention and wasting their time. So it creates a more respectful environment for your end users, but equally it helps manage other issues. From a cost perspective, you can get a bigger model, you can get a smarter model, and if it takes a bit longer, the user isn't going to be too concerned. They're happy to wait, they expect to wait. From a cost perspective as well, you can use the likes of Amazon Bedrock's batch processing to have it processed in the background and save a significant amount of money compared to requiring it to be asynchronous. And then finally, from a security perspective, because you're not trying to race the clock with a user's attention, you can introduce robust security mechanisms around another LLM as a judge to ascertain, does the output manage the risk to my business appropriately? So again, with all of this, it's not to say don't use synchronous tasks, but preferring asynchronous tasks means that you are more likely to navigate some of these challenges with large language models. Our third AI product design strategy is an extension of the first, and that is to focus on narrowly scoped tasks over broad scoped tasks. If you think of the outcomes or the activities that your users do on your platform and the tasks that you can automate, you can think of it as a continuum from a very narrow scoped to a broad orchestration scoped task. By focusing on a narrowly scoped tasks, you generally will make it very clear to your users as to what they can expect. If you start with a broadly scoped task, they start to think there's a bit of magic. It becomes very difficult for you to set expectations for your user about the outcomes, which means you may get misaligned expectations and frustrated users. So by building those narrowly scoped features, you're more likely to get an understanding from your user, and over time you can take them on that journey towards a broadly scoped task. And of course, just like tasks over conversations, the previous principle or strategy is that this strategy means that you can focus on the exact outcome, you can iterate quickly as to what's working or what's not, and slowly improve it and add value over time, than spending a lot of time making a broadly scoped, complex interaction pattern, which may be challenging to build and deliver. And our fourth AI product design strategy kind of pulls on this thread a little bit around setting expectations with users. And that is augmentation over automation. So if you automate a process in your product, you're making the user or forcing the user to make a binary trust decision. That decision, binary trust decision is, do I trust this feature or do I not? True or false? Now, many of us will have had bad experiences with AI features in the past that we will just default to saying, I don't trust this feature. So by automating it, you're going to lose traction with your users because they just do not trust what your product can do for them, even if it is a great product feature. So by augmenting an existing process or forcing augmentation of an existing process in your product with this new generative AI feature, you can take users on that journey. The users get to see the output, they can sanity check it, they can sign it off, they can correct it if necessary before proceeding on. You'll notice the previous examples, Tappy with their invoice processing, there's a step there to sanity check it, validate it. If there's something not quite right, you can fix it. But importantly, it builds trust with the users. So over time, you've got your feature, your customers are using it, they're augmenting it, or they're being augmented. They're happy, right? They're not doing some of the tedious work in your product anymore. It's being augmented, they're getting to check it. But over time, as you build that trust, as you take your users on that journey with you, you can slowly automate more and more and more and more of the feature and get that ongoing, sustained engagement with your product. That means it's going to be more successful. Of course, this helps manage some of the other LLM challenges, technical challenges. By augmenting, you're forcing yourself to focus on the task to get an outcome without expecting perfection. Large language models, of course, will always have some inaccuracy, and by trying to automate something, you're basically forcing yourself into a corner where you have to have the biggest, best model, so you've got the most likelihood of success. With augmentation, users typically may not expect perfection, which means that you may be able to choose a smaller model, you may be able to choose a model that's available in the right region, and other constraints that you can work around by not expecting perfection at the first go. So I would just like to close the loop on these 4 AI product design strategies and come back to a product lifecycle. So nothing changes with a product lifecycle with generative AI. The same tried and tested approach that we've been using to develop new product features for many years still applies here. But in order for you to get success in delivering these features iteratively and improving it and getting consistent engagement with your users over time, I just want you to take away the 4 AI product design strategies. And that is to focus on tasks over conversations. What is the job to be done? What is the outcome that your users are looking to achieve rather than the interface that they engage with? When you're deciding those tasks, keep the tasks narrow. Get an outcome, get value quickly so that you can iterate. Make the tasks asynchronous, so you're not racing the clock with your users' attention with large language models that may be slow or may have rate limit issues or may not be available in the regions that you need because you're not getting the performance that you need. And finally, augment. Build trust incrementally. Take users on this journey with you. Make sure they're happy with those features before you automate and get them to be happy and engaged over time. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, David and Nicola, for your session today. I know what I'm thinking about after watching this session. How can I build and use Gen AI in a more impactful way for my customers? In a moment, we will be putting the QR codes on the screen. Please do take the time to provide David and Nicola feedback via the AWS Summit app. Lastly, if you could leave the headsets on the back of each seat, that would be great. Thank you, everyone.